Alright guys, so we are going to continue our reading for Counting by 7's with chapter 36. Remember, Willow and Mai and all of the characters of the story are in the midst of a very crazy kind of scheme where they're really trying to make sure that Willow doesn't get taken into a different foster care place so that she can stay with her friends. So we're kind of jumping in as that transition from the garage home to Del Duke's apartment is just wrapping up. So here we go. I'm exhausted. I've helped transform the apartment of a single, lazy, hoarding hermit into an actual family living space. And this has been done insanely fast. Now as the bamboo steamer gets going and Patty has me chopping up green onions, the buzzer rings. Lenora Cole is downstairs. Once a week since the accident, I've gone to Jameson. I've had a complete physical exam and I've had 3 sit-downs with a psychiatrist, Dr. Ron McDevitt, and I've seen Lenora Cole twice. There's been talk of a permanent placement in foster care, but it's not easy finding spots for older kids. I met a girl in the bathroom during my visit last Thursday who said that once your baby teeth fall out, no one wants you. She also told me that prospective parents always pick the blonde kids first. And I don't think she was trying to be a bully or anything. We both had hair the color of ink. The social worker isn't with us long, which is a good thing. I guess we passed the test. Patty's not trying to be a foster parent, but still, they have requirements even for temporary custody people. In the hallway, Lenore says, "We will find a right place for you. That's our mission." I don't answer. I want to see this lady out the front gate and into her car and off the streets and out of town and then removed from the country and the whole state and then finally relocated to a place they call Tornado Alley in Kansas. But it's not her fault. I am the problem. Maybe there are all kinds of available foster homes in Kansas. I'm in the shadows of the entryway watching as the social worker gets in her car and pulls away from the curb. She drives right by Mai. Just seeing the graceful teenager changes everything for me. When I tell her that we have a pretend room complete with Semper Fi bunk beds, she rotates in her shell. She doesn't have an actual shell, of course, but whatever hard casing that protects her from life literally shifts before my eyes. Apparently, she's long wanted to climb a metal ladder before she goes to sleep. That means that she's always really wanted a bunk bed. Maybe it's from years of sleeping on a floor. I don't want to disappoint her by saying that all of this was just for show so they won't haul me away. Once in the apartment, I thank Patty for everything that she did today, and to my great relief, she's finally sitting down. The world's ultimate pragmatist just shrugs and says something in Vietnamese, and that translates to what we expect rarely occurs and what we don't expect is what happens. I reach over and I take Patty's hand. I'm surprised as I do this. I'm too old to be acting this way, but I can't stop myself, and I manage to say, "It's not a scientific way to view event sequence, but given what's going on in my life, I completely understand." It's the most that I've been able to communicate in a very long time, and I'm not sure if I'm just tired or if something has changed, but as I look at her with my hand in hers, I smile. My teeth don't even stick to my lips, and Patty doesn't turn away. Everyone is really hungry, even me, and I never have an appetite anymore. So Patty tries to reach Del, but he doesn't answer his cell phone, so we have dinner without him. And what's especially strange is that suddenly it feels as if we really do live in the Gardens of Glenwood. We eat our food at the red linoleum top table and toss the paper plates, because Del doesn't have real ones, into the trash. Patty has Kwang Ha immediately take down the garbage to the dumpster because the kitchen is a trash-free zone now, and we all help clean up and put away the leftovers, and then we make ourselves at home on the newly acquired furniture. I can't believe that she has the energy, but Patty starts to fold Del's mountain of clean underwear into tight, compressed squares, and they look like they came out of some sort of vending machine. That is how precise she is. Can you imagine if there really were underwear vending machines? Kwang Ha is in love with Del's large TV, and he finds a program where Japanese soccer players use their heads to smash clay pots. We all watch, and it's strangely addicting. I know that these blows to the skull can cause long-term health issues of a very serious nature, but right now that seems like the last thing I should be worried about, so I let it go. For a brief moment, because everything in this room is so different, I forget that I don't have a mother or a father or a place to call home. I lean back on the sofa, and I feel a sharp pain in my right hip. When I put my hand there, I realize that I'm sitting on a small green acorn. I have no idea how it got on the couch. Apples grow on apple trees, and cherries grow on cherry trees, but we don't say that acorns grow on acorn trees, and things like that I think are interesting, at least to some people. I hold a little nut, which is by definition a fruit, in the palm of my hand, and Mai sits next to me. She smiles and she says, "Maybe that's a lucky acorn." I slip it into my pocket, and maybe she's right. It is a seed after all, and they are by definition the beginning of something. And then I rest my head on the back of the sofa, and even though my eyes are all watery, I can make out the full moon as a fuzzy amber and green lollipop on the other side of the skylight, and that is not a bad thing. It was late when Dell finally stumbled into his apartment. He literally didn't recognize the place, and it's not just because Patty was asleep on the new Salvation Army couch and Kwang Ha was sprawled out on the carpet nearby under a red blanket. Dell shut the door and he moved into the hallway. Willow and Mai could be seen sleeping in the second bedroom in the Semper Fi bunks, and he wondered why they hadn't all gone home, but then he remembered they didn't have a car, and right now neither did he, because, well, he walked home. After staring in wonder at all the changes, he finally made it to his room, where his bed was made up with Patty's sheets and a fluffy comforter. Dell planted himself face first on top of the mattress, and that's where he was only 5 hours later when the sound of the shower in the bathroom woke him up. It was not a normal noise. He never heard water running in his own apartment. Dell opened his eyes and realized that sound was from the bathroom. He squinted at the digital eyes of his bedside clock and saw 5:21 a.m. Who in the world would get up this early? It was one of them, and he had a good idea which one. Dell would have given his left foot for another hour of uninterrupted sleep. He shut his eyes and suddenly saw himself minus everything below the ankle on his weaker side. And that made him wonder if the injury meant he had collected some sort of disability payment from the school district. He used his right foot to drive, like most people did, so he guessed the left foot didn't bring in as much cash in a settlement. Isn't that the way insurance companies worked? Everything had some kind of predetermined price. Maybe it was better to give up a left arm. And then there was a knock at the door, and Dell Duke, the internal idiotic discussion forum, was interrupted by the voice of Patty Nugent. "Are you awake?" He wanted to say that he was now, but instead he answered, "Been up for hours." He hoped it sounded deeply sarcastic, but she said, "Me too." Patty pushed the door open and entered, talking. "Social services is coming back next week. Until they find a permanent place for Willow, I think it would be easier if we just stayed here. I can't keep cleaning up after you." Dell was silent, not because he didn't have an opinion, but he didn't have the energy this early in the morning to scream at the top of his lungs. Patty forged on. "I saw a notice on the board in the laundry room, Unit 22, just down the hall, looking for a roommate." Dell shut his eyes. This had to be a dream, except that in his dreams he was usually hiding, and often his body had mysteriously been painted bright blue. Dell opened his eyes, and Patty was already heading toward the door. "I'm going to get the email address. It's not too early for you to send a message saying that you're interested. It's temporary, just until we get all of this straightened out." Dell had seen Sadhu in the parking garage, but they had never as so much said hello. Now, at an insane hour of the morning, he was sitting across from the man. The crazy Nugent woman had insisted that he send an email right away, and then to his horror of his laptop showed an immediate reply. The guy who was just sitting down the hall wanted to come over right away and meet, but shouldn't this man be asleep? What was wrong with all these people? Sadhu cleared his throat and said, "I'm a vegetarian." And Dell nodded, and Sadhu looked suddenly hopeful. "Are you a vegetarian too?" Dell shook his head. He wasn't going to lie, but he wasn't going to go into detail about his meatloaf obsession. Because Dell was so tired and it looked appealing to someone who had he looked appealingly like someone who had been to mime school, or at the very least believed strongly in the power of nonverbal communication. His answers were a series of head movements, punctuated by yawning or raised eyebrow and a semi-swallowed hiccups. And that's why he was approved as a roommate. Minutes after he took his seat, Patty Nugent came down the hall and wrote Sadhu Kumar a check for 1 month's rent for a second bedroom in Unit 22 in the apartment complex where Dell already rented Unit 28. She would cover his expenses living with Sadhu, and Dell would continue to make the payment on his place. As he shook his hands on the deal, Dell found enough of a voice to make a statement. He said, "Spicy food gives me indigestion." Sadhu nodded his head as if he understood, but Del felt certain that the guy was wearing pickling peppers on his stovetop. Chapter 38. It's all just temporary. That's what Patty keeps saying. I believe that's becoming her favorite word. What is more temporary than nail polish? No wonder she has such an attachment to that concept. Patty explains that until the right place can be found for me, we will all stay at the garden in Unit 28. There will be weekly home visits from social services, and the coming and going would be far too much. I don't explain that everything in the world is temporary because I don't get into those kind of conversations. I say that I understand. But I feel bad for Del Duke, not just because Patty and I saw his underwear mountain, which maybe is why he agreed to move down the hall. Back home, when I used to sit in my garden, I liked to observe birds, and not just the green-rumped parrots, but also the migrating species. I think now to how small birds often move in large flocks. From a distance, it can even look like smoke. It is unclear why they suddenly shift directions. The birds appear to have lost their individual intention. They are part of a bigger organization of life, and they accept that. Something inside of them gives in. Scientists don't know what it is, and right now, I'm in a flock, and so is Del Duke, whether he likes it or not. I watch as Del gathers some of his clothing, his toothbrush, and a container of what looks like hairspray and heads down the hallway to Sadhu Kumar's apartment with a heavy step. He's not stomping, but it's close. Who can blame him? 2 hours later, with Mai and Guang Ha awake and helping, Del's work clothes, as well as his oversized sweatpants, his collection of sandals, and enough underwear to last 6 months are all jammed in the Kumar apartment's second bedroom in the tiny closet. Only a garbage bag of old t-shirts stays behind. And since Del's bureau and closet are empty, Patty borrows his car and brings over a few more things from the nail salon. Mai goes with her. I don't think I've ever seen my teenage friend so happy. Del has a huge TV, but he hadn't programmed it correctly. So I adjust the setting, and now everything isn't all stretched and too bright. I also fix it so that the audio is in sync with the picture. It wasn't properly aligned before. I notice that over 70 channels haven't been activated. I don't think he read the manual. Del comes in and sees the changes and says that people really do look better when they're not orange and wide. He especially is pleased when they speak and that their lips match. I showed him the new channels that I programmed, and he gets angry because he's been paying a year for premium services. He got pretty worked up about it. I know for certain that we will have things to talk about in our weekly counseling session, but he's asked me to review every appliance in the place. Tonight, the new living arrangements take effect. Mai and I sleep in the second bedroom. Patty is now in Del's old room. Del is down the hall at Sadhu Kumar's. Guang Ha has officially taken over the living room. He has blankets and pillows on the couch because he sleeps right in front of the big TV, and I mean right in front. This could cause eye strain, but he looks so thrilled with everything about this new arrangement that I don't bring it up. I wake up in the Semper Fi bunk bed this morning to realize that I'm going to need to pull my own weight, at least as much as a 12-year-old kid can. My parents didn't have life insurance or much in terms of a savings account. They were responsible and hardworking, but it turns out that they didn't excel in the long-term planning department. I will start by putting Patty's accounting from Happy Polish on a new computer program. Everyone has made sacrifices for me, and now I feel like I can do the same. 3 days have passed. Maybe it's some kind of joke, but Guang Ha leaves an avocado pit in the window ledge. Apparently, he loves guacamole. Mai says when Guang Ha was little, he used to put toothpicks in the sides and tried to grow avocado trees. Guang Ha then gets mad and throws the pit in the garbage can. I have not thought about cultivation since before. Notice how before is capitalized. That means it's a proper noun. This means a specific time and place, which is before the accidents happened. It's too painful. But when no one is looking, I rescue the avocado pit from the trash, and I almost cry just looking at the thing. Suddenly, I can't help myself, and I start to think about soil composition. I try to put it out of my mind, and later when I glance out the window, my eyes fall on the scrubby trees across the street. 3 different species. I consider the possibility of grafting the wood stems from one plant to another. I'm lying in bed. Everyone is asleep. It is late. Night is always the hardest. The shadows pull you under, and I can hear a dog barking somewhere outside. I shut my eyes, and instead of darkness, I see rooting hormones. I have a place, what Mai calls my lucky acorn, I have placed what Mai calls my lucky acorn on a box next to our bunk beds, which serves as a nightstand. I open my eyes and I stare at it. The world of plants is a slippery slope. It's hard to care just a little. That means she cares quite a bit. Let's keep reading. Chapter 39. It's the weekend. I come into the living room and Kwang Ha is sprawled out on the sofa, moving from channel to channel as if being paid by the number of programs he can simultaneously track. His agitation is some kind of internal struggle, but it isn't muscular, it's mental. I know the difference. He doesn't take his eyes off the television, but he does say, "Are you looking for something?" And I want to say yes, I'm looking for anything that could make a world gone flat return to its original shape, but instead I mumble, "No, I'm just getting a glass of water. Dehydration is the cause of 90% of daytime fatigue." Someone is knocking at the door. It's Saturday, and Patty's at work, Mai is out with her friends, and Kwang Ha and I are both home at the gardens. I open the door to find Del standing there. He starts to say something, but nothing comes out. I know exactly how he feels. This is all so weird for so many reasons. We live in Del Duke's apartment, and he has to knock to even come inside. Patty set down some ground rules on Thursday. She's tough, but she actually took away his key because he locked himself in the bathroom the second day for over an hour, and he should be using Seduce from now on. But I pull open the door for him, which is welcoming. If I were in the wild, I would have parted the leaves of the trees and moved back a branch. He steps inside. Kwang Ha shouts over his shoulder, "Whatever it is, I didn't do it." Kwang Ha has a real persecution complex, which is no doubt legitimate. The chubby counselor says, "I don't have a television down the hall and I'm missing all my shows." Kwang Ha answers, "You can watch with me as long as you don't do anything nasty." I see Del's face soften. I think he likes the word nasty. I'm invisible now, which is fine with me. Del moves closer to the big screen, TV, asking, "Do you watch a lot of sports?" Kwang Ha's response didn't seem like a joke. "Not if I can help it." This is the right answer because Del seems relieved as he drops down to the couch. It's a real thud, and I feel bad for whoever lives underneath us. I didn't have siblings, and my dad never had friends over to hang out with on the couch and talk back to the television set, but that's what's happening now, so this is all new to me. Del takes out a pair of fingernail clippers from his pants pocket, and while Kwang Ha flips through the channels, Del pulls off his socks and clips his toenails. Sick. I don't think you would do that if you hadn't lived here before. Blah. I retreat to the shadows of the kitchen. Instead of staring off into space or sleeping, I watch. Since the accident, I feel next to nothing about everything, so it's possible that this surveillance will be beneficial to me from a psychological standpoint, but probably not. The teenage boy and man are close to wild animal obsession as anything I've seen. I realize that this is a unique opportunity to get an insight into both of these people. Not that either of them is very mysterious, but I'm looking for an understanding of bigger things, like the human race as an example. Right away I noticed that Del and Kwang Ha scratch more than girls. They're slumped down in their seats and they appear to be concentrating on televised programming. On 3 occasions I hear what can only be described as aggressive laughter. After the third outburst, they each make a fist and bump knuckles. For a nanosecond, I'm fearful this signals a fight, but it's just the opposite. The knuckle touch is a bond. I know that for a fact these two people don't even like each other. Is this television program bringing them together? Why would watching a group of out-of-control kids competing in a canoe do this? I conduct my surveillance from the shadows next to the purring refrigerator. It is silent and motionless type of observation. They seem to have forgotten that I'm in the apartment. Their behavior appears completely reflexive and natural. Kwang Ha has the television remote, and he moves through the channels in a way that a grandmother might turn the pages of a speedboat catalog featuring water skis. There's not much stopping for analysis. Del and Kwang Ha appear to be hunting for 2 things. Mostly they are looking for acts of violence. They watch with great amusement as a man in a cartoon gets hit with an ice pick, and the rest of the time they seem to be searching the airwaves for something else. After a while, I've had enough and I go downstairs to be outside. I need fresh air. Growing up, unless it was raining hard, I was always outdoors for part of the day, and now I want to sit in my old backyard, which was in some ways a jungle. But of course I can't do that. Even though this place is called Gardens of Glenwood, there's nothing but weeds and the dusty pumice rock in the central open area. I take a seat on the steps and I stare at the layers of stone, which from a distance looks like heaps of red potatoes. I shut my eyes. As long as I keep them closed, I'm surrounded by greenery. I can feel the plants swaying in the wind and the ground alive below me. I used to be somewhat of an expert on earthworms because of the good garden holds at so many kinds of life. But over the years, I made homemade paper for the tree pulp. I mashed grapes with my feet, but it was easier to use a blender. We harvested a lot of what we grew. Now I listen to the dryer tumbling in the laundry room and someone's radio, and I can hear bits of an advertisement for a place that sells discount tires. And the guy on the radio doesn't know that I lost my parents. He's just selling cheap rubber wheels. The person who put the clothes in the dryer has no idea that I need a foster home. Overhead, I hear the sound of a jet engine, and I open my eyes and look up in time to see the plane pass by high in the sky. I'm thinking now about the passengers on board, and I'm wondering about them and their lives. Are they looking out the windows next to their seats? Do they see a 2-story apartment building that is an unappealing color of pink? Do they give a thought to the people inside? Do they feel a girl sitting on the steps trying to make sense of the world? I seriously doubt it. Who wants a seat at my pity party? I get up and I head out of the gate to the front of the apartment complex, and I see a hummingbird in a bottle brush tree that is planted in the space between the sidewalk and the street. I make a decision and I head upstairs. No one looks up when I enter. I go to the kitchen and I boil 4 cups of water, and then I add 1 cup of sugar, and I wait for the mixture to cool. This is what I have used in the past to feed the hummingbirds. Now I put the still warm syrup in a bowl and I go back downstairs. First I put on my red sun hat. Outside I take a seat next to the flowering tree. I dip my hands into the sugary mix and I sit very, very still. It takes a long time, but a rubbery-throated hummingbird finally descends and eats from the tip of my unmoving, sweetened index finger. I've heard that there are places that hold statue contests, and I'm certain that they aren't anywhere near Bakersfield. I will only see what I want to see. I think this is how people get through a crisis. The world where we live is so much harder in our head. If I'm sent by the state of California to foster care in a remote location with no internet, no books, no vegetables, where I live with a family who secretly makes bad choices and only eats canned meat, then so be it. Until then, my life is here at the Gardens of Glenwood, and I'm thinking this place really needs a real garden. Chapter 40 is really when we see a change, not only in Willow, but in the story, and in the motivation, and in the oomph that Willow has been trying and seeking to find. Come back tomorrow, and we'll keep on reading.